In a world still chasing economic justice, one voice rises to inspire change. From the streets to the boardrooms, from ideas to real action, Cornell Cruz Jr. invites you to listen, learn and transform. Drawn from the people, the community, always present, always pushing forward. Together we build opportunity, we build trust, and we build a just economy for all. This is the Just Economy Project, where equity has a sound, and the future begins with you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Just Economy Podcast. I'm your host, Cornell Cruz Jr., the Executive Director of the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. The Just Economy Podcast is a podcast sponsored by the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. The Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida is a statewide membership organization. We are a nonprofit, and what we do is ensure that the banks reinvest into the community per the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. We also provide trainings, education, collaborations, and partnerships between the banks, nonprofits, and the community and government as well. Today our guest is going to be Eboni Moss from the Master Resource. We'll get to her in a second, but I got a couple of things I want to talk to you about. One, we had our annual membership meeting on yesterday, and thank you all who participated. We did it in person as well as online, and thank you for those who participated. We're going to do those every year, preferably right before the summit. May 14th is the summit, so right before the summit, we'll do membership. And the big thing about the membership meeting is that although I give you updates on legislation as well as some programs that are going on, not only with our organization but with other organizations, we also take a survey. And also I want to listen to you and what you think that we need to do for you and how we can better provide our services to the community and to our nonprofit members. The next thing is the NCRC Conference, National Community Reinvestment Coalition Conference, is coming up April 14th through 16th. As a matter of fact, my guest today was one of my scholarships, and she's coming to her first NCRC conference in Washington, D.C. We'll be there from the 14th through the 16th, with the 16th being Hill Day. We'll spend the whole day up on Capitol Hill talking to Florida legislators about not only CRA but our issues within our communities. All members will be receiving an email from me asking you to send me any ideas, any things that you want me to bring up to those legislators while we're in that room. We'll meet with them. The Hill Day is a long day. We'll spend all day on the Hill from 8 till like 4:30, 5 o'clock, meeting with the different legislators. So I look forward to hearing from you from that. And then Summit 26 is May 14th, 2026 at Gulfstream Park in the Sport of Kings room, same place we had it last year. We had some great reviews on the venue last year, so we went back to it. This year we're going to focus on social impact investing. We're going to have a social impact panel. We're going to talk about getting the smaller nonprofits or the nonprofits who are not as well known in front of those people with money who want to invest in their communities. I read something in the Small Business Journal on Monday. It is unbelievable the amount of money that has moved to Florida and South Florida in particular. Forbes magazine came out with their billionaires, and the amount of billionaires went up 18% in 2025. They came out with the amount of billionaires that there are in the world and in this country and South Florida. 50 billionaires that's on that Forbes list live in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. 50 of them. You won't believe what their total wealth is. Their total accumulated wealth of those 50 billionaires. We're not talking about multimillionaires. We're not talking about the person who has 989 million. We're talking about billionaires or above. Just those 50 billionaires are worth $687 billion. I don't care who you are. That's a whole lot of money. And what we want to do is encourage them to volunteer, participate in, and hopefully help fund the organizations who are serving our communities down here. A lot of it has to do with they just don't know who we are or how to reach us. So part of my mission this year that's designated by my board is to help the organizations get in front of these billionaires. So at the summit, we're going to focus on that. Not only are we going to focus on getting you in front of those billionaires, but how to participate with those billionaires. Because if somebody writes you a big check, you got to know how you're going to use it. And Emmy's going to talk about that when we get to her. And you got to know how to use it, and you got to be able to provide reports. You got to be able to give those folks who are investing in our community. Thus the term social impact investing. Those folks who are investing in our communities, you got to be able to report back on how your mission is going to change our community, or could change the circumstance of folks down the line. So we're going to really talk about that at the summit. I look forward to seeing you all there. Ticket sales or early bird ticket sales are going on right now. So go to our website or go to our social media, and you'll be able to find the link, the QR code to come in and purchase your ticket. I'm still working on keynote speakers. We always have some great keynote speakers, so be on the lookout for that as well. So now we're going to move on to the podcast, and we're going to talk to Eboni Moss. Eboni is the founder and CEO of the Master Resource. She's a certified public accountant, and decided to try to help us nonprofits find our way. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. Welcome, Eboni.
Thank you so much for having me, Cornell. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Good. So let's talk about you. I ask I'm very interested in history.
Okay.
Not being nosy.
Okay.
I'm just interested
nosy
in history.
Nosy is good. I like nosy. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm just interested in history. How did you get here?
In terms of career-wise?
Both.
So I was born and raised in Miami. So I am a Miami girl, down south, Richmond Heights. And every time I say that, people are like, oh my gosh, you were always all the way down there. Yes, I was all the way down there. So born and raised here. I did go to University of Florida, and then I lived in Atlanta for 10 years, but boomeranged back to South Florida in 2014. So it's been a little bit over 10 years that I've been back. And so for me, my trajectory was, I went to University of Florida with the intention of being a veterinarian. I went to Richmond Heights Middle School, magnet school for zoology, magnet school, coral reef magnet school for agri-science, and so I just knew that was my trajectory. But I took chemistry at UF, and I was like, absolutely not. This ain't gonna get it. This ain't gonna get it. But I am one of those people that you tell me I can't do something and I do it. So someone was like, oh my gosh, accounting classes are so hard, because I transitioned into business. I was like, oh, say less. I got this. And so for me, that's what started my trajectory in terms of pursuing a career in accounting. And then went on to started my career at Deloitte, one of the big four firms, the biggest at the time. I'm not sure if they still are, but eventually got my CPA, moved up the corporate ladder to become a senior manager. And even in that trajectory, I always knew I wanted to work in the nonprofit space. Both my parents were servant leaders in their own right in terms of their careers. And for me, it was something that I always just had this pull to be a part of. And so I wanted to do it. And then the recession happened. And I had just bought a house, and I was like, well, I guess that's not going to happen in 2006, 2008. And then just got to the point of my next step was being a partner. And there was nothing in me that had that desire to be a partner in a firm. Bless those people that actually take that route. But I said, this is my opportunity to do what my heart desires and what I've been called to do. And so 2020, during the pandemic, I was part of this whole great resignation that I didn't know was a thing, wasn't even titled at the time, resigned and started my business. And so ever since then, since 2020, I've been working with smaller businesses at a lesser degree, but mainly focusing on nonprofits and specifically in South Florida.
So what was the draw to nonprofits?
I just think that, my name, my first name Ebony, last name Naya. My parents literally named me Black Woman with Purpose. So for me, I just knew that there was something that existed. My purpose on this earth was not to help. You just talked about those billionaires. It wasn't help the rich get richer. That just wasn't something that I felt in my heart was what I was brought here to do. And I just know that there are so many systemic things that exist in communities that need expertise, that need just ingenuity, that need ideation, that need guidance. And I feel like that's something that I can bring to the table. And I just love dealing with people. I'm an introverted extrovert, so I absolutely love working with people, dealing with people, but I absolutely have to be charged by myself. And so it was just a great intersection of those two things that pulled me to the work, and being something where I feel like in the nonprofit space, I feel like it's an opportunity to be more authentic, whereas in corporate it's a little bit more structured, a little bit more black and white. But I always had this thing of, be a peacock in the space. And so for me, this just allows me to be more of a peacock than I feel like I could do in corporate.
So by no stretch of the imagination is this going to be a kissy, hug discussion. We're also going to talk about some of the things that annoy us about nonprofits.
Okay.
But Ebony and I have served on have reviewed some grants for several organizations, and as we've read those grants and scored them and things of that nature, how have you seen the trajectory of the grant writing process from the nonprofits as they submit for grants?
I think it's challenging for organizations, partly for capacity reasons, right? You have folks that, they started their organizations out of a place of love and a place of need and what they see to be something that was a gap in their community, or just a place of experience, right? Whether it was a tragedy that they experienced and they say, hey, I want to be a change in this particular space, right? Nobody's doing enough work that is satisfying my appetite to make this right. And so I think when you have that, you have folks that are just not necessarily equipped for being able to write really great grants. And then the struggle is you have larger organizations who are legacy organizations who have the means and resources, and they have the grant writers, they have the development folks. And so they have the opportunity to write great grants, even though and I'm not saying big organizations don't deserve to be funded. That's never what I'm saying. But it definitely makes it more competitive and harder for smaller organizations to be able to compete sometimes. But I think also with the emergence of AI, not that it's a new thing, but just the emergence of AI, more accessible to smaller organizations, that they're relying on it a little bit too much. I think you can read some things and say, ooh, this sounds very robotish. This sounds something that was just copy and paste. And it really doesn't speak to the heart of the organization. And so I think while that is a tool that is helpful that folks can leverage, I think they're leaning on it a little bit too much to the point that they take away the real sole purpose of what it is they do. They take out the human element of what they do. And so unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword that really does affect them.
So it sounds like what you're saying with AI, the feeling is going.
Some of it is. It is. And I get it. You're trying to make the most of your time, but you can't allow that to replace something, because you either go from not writing a great application just as a human and not writing a great application from a machine, right? So, I mean, you have to have an opportunity to say, this can leverage it. I'm not going to get away with spending 2 hours on this application, but instead of spending 20 hours, maybe I could spend 10. Like, you still have to put the time in.
I know when I read them, and this past, and Em and I have discussed this on a few occasions. So getting past the financials, I can read your financials. I can add 2 + 2 = 4. I get that. That narrative though is what grabs me, and that's something I really. And if that passion is gone, and with AI, the passion is not there. As you stated, it sounds robotic, and that unnerves me to say the least. So, in preparing for this, I was telling Ebony earlier before we started taping that something came across my timeline, and they were talking about the post was, when should organizations start applying for grants? It is my belief that sometimes we think that the grant is to do all. If I just get this grant, we can survive another 6 months. But when actually, in your opinion, when should that actually happen?
When you have impact, when you have results, right? I think people get, and that's not, I think, I know. I also do mentoring for SCORE, and so they filter a lot of the nonprofit inquiries to me. And so I have conversations with new founders, existing founders that have had organizations for years that haven't really done anything, or people that say, I want to start a nonprofit. And unfortunately, people think getting this 501c3 designation is like this golden egg that once I get this, the money will come, those types of things. And I'm like, this is what I tell people. I say, take a step back. We don't even got to get into the tax law, but put it on my CPA. I tell, if the average person could do it and become wealthy out, it's probably not a realistic thing. You know what I mean? Like just logically, it's just not realistic.
We don't get rich being nonprofits.
Right. And so at the end of the day, but that also doesn't mean you don't need to run it as a business too. I just want that caveat. But what happens is that people say, hey, I have my 501c3 designation. I have a name. I barely have a mission. I'm going to go and apply for grants. But I'm like, okay, but you got to think about what the questions are on the application. What is your impact? How are you going to measure stuff? People don't even have their programs defined. I can have a conversation with somebody and say, okay, well, walk me through the journey of a client. How do you find your clients? What is the experience of your clients when they get there? Okay, they do this one thing. What's the next step? And so people don't even have the opportunity to really like kind of hone down and get the details of what it is to be a part of their organization. So how do you think that you're going to write a compelling grant application when you have no results, you barely have clients, if any, you don't have a budget, and what a budget you do have is not a realistic budget, and then also you just don't have the awareness of the landscape to say, hey, this is a competitive landscape. It's more competitive than open up a small business. You can, hey, I'm selling this widget, I'm selling this service. But with nonprofits, if you're talking about a grant specific, or even just giving somebody to get a donation, because what people are getting back is an intrinsic value of, wow, I helped somebody, not I'm getting a thing back, right? There's no value. So you have to appeal even more to folks to get them to open up their wallets for your organization, which is even harder than running a business. And so I think what has to happen is that folks really have to take a step back and say, am I ready? Have I done the work? And sometimes you have to have skin in the game. You have to put your money up first before somebody else is going to do it.
This is true.
And a lot of times organizations don't want to be your first funder, and they definitely don't want to be your only funder.
So in the services that you provide, are you, how hard is it? How hard is it to tell someone, maybe you don't need to be a nonprofit?
It's not hard for me. I don't have a problem, but I'm also tactful with it, right? Like I'm not going to be mean
because their passion is in it, their heart is
Absolutely.
in it. They want to do it. They see there is a need,
100%,
but they can't articulate that need,
right?
Or as Eboni said, so importantly, they can't produce results,
right. So I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's not hard for me to say, hey, you're not ready yet, because what I don't want you to do is to go out and be unsuccessful, right? And so even with me, like I've had turned away potential clients because I'm like, I'm not going to take your money because there's nothing for me to write. I have no material to write, right? Like I'm not even in your organization, and you can't give me material to write. So how am I supposed to come up with this? So I've definitely turned away folks, and I think, but I turn away with also the information to say, this is what you need to do. Do this, work on this. Here's your homework. Come back. We can have a different conversation at a different point in time. I'm absolutely here to help you through that journey. But what can't happen is us fabricating information to submit applications, because A, it's not worth your investment in me, and B, I'm not going to do it because I know it's not something that's going to be fundable. And while I don't have 100% batting average when it comes to my grant applications, I always put out the best product. And so some of the times I even take it personal to the point where it's like, I know this was perfect. But that was for organizations that really have put in the time and energy and work and have the results.
So, and when we're talking, I think what we're really talking about right here is startups, nonprofits.
And also knowing that startups can even be, you've had this nonprofit for 10 years, you just never done anything with it.
So that's still a startup where I'm concerned.
And that's what I'm saying. Exactly.
That's still a startup.
Absolutely.
That's still a startup. So as you look at seasoned organizations as well, and those that are not on the realms of the huge organizations that's pulling in, that has a $20-30 million budget. Talking about smaller organizations who are maybe in the $10 million, $5 million, things of that nature. Do you see some of the same traits?
Of not necessarily being ready?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily say, seeing some of the same traits. I think it's more of being a little bit more comfortable, because that is even though that's a smaller budget, that's the larger budget, right? And so a lot of organizations that I like to work with are like 2-3 million and below, just because they really do need that push to get to that next level, to get to that 10 million, that get to that 5 million. But I say with those types of organizations, I think it's just more so kind of resting on your laurels a little bit, right? To say that, hey, the name carries some weight and some goodwill, and it allows people to, get a little bit more lax in terms of their application, their writing, their effort. And so I think it's just a different way that they kind of hurt themselves.
It's so interesting. I hadn't thought about it till you just said it. It's so interesting that you bring that up. Resting on the laurels. Yeah. They've gotten grant after grant after grant. They've done some great work in the community, and now they feel like, I could do just a half-hearted effort, because people and reviewers in the room may already know my name,
right,
and know about the work that I've done in the past.
Absolutely.
So that I hadn't even thought about that, how that impacts as well.
I had a conversation with I was working with an organization out in Texas, a small city in Texas. I won't name the name, but I was talking to the ED, and this particular organization had gotten funding from them year after year. I'm talking about like legacy funding. And he's just gotten to the point he was like, I've had to have a tough conversation with them that I'm not funding them again until they, for instance, if they're supposed to produce 10 things, they're producing one. And he was like, if they continue on this trajectory, because they're a well-known organization, they're just, again, resting on their laurels, I'm not going to fund them, because they just have an expectation that they deserve to have.
They think the check is automatic.
They're entitled to this funding. And so it's just, again, it's something where, and especially in this landscape where funding is so competitive, and a lot of people are moving from government to private funding just because of what's going on. The pot is not growing. The pot of money isn't growing, but the applicants are growing. I got off a call with the funder last week, and she was saying, we used to get 60 applications just because of the nature of the organization, and we got 400 this year. I'm like, my goodness.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We did a nonprofit capacity building project over the last 2 years. Just serving Dade, Barter, Palm Beach County, we had 162 applications.
Absolutely.
And we were just funding organizations that had a budget of 500 and below.
Right.
And we got 162 applications. That was simply amazing. I mean, I wish we could have funded everybody.
Yeah.
But it was just a matter that we now are able to show the need as we look at our report back, because we had 3 years to get that money on the street, and we did it in a year and a half.
Yeah.
So it was, and it was not a challenge at all to write those checks. Not a challenge at all.
Right,
so it's interesting that even those who are seasoned nonprofits get to that point, that, okay, the Cornell Cruz Junior Foundation has been funding me for the last 5 years. Yeah. No worries. They'll keep funding me, thinking that nobody's reading their submissions at all, right? So that can, I guess your message is, don't get comfortable.
You can't get comfortable, right? Because at the end of the day, nonprofit, part of it is it's a sales job, right? You have to create awareness about your organization. You have to make sure that people not only know who you are, your name, but also the impact. Like, what are you actually doing to transform the communities that you say that you serve? And where's the overlap in what our funding cause areas are and what it is that you do? And the other thing I would say, when we talk about applications too, is organizations have a tendency to try to shift and shape-shift their mission and their programming to fit the goals of a grant too. So that's also where people mess when we talk about narrative. And for me as a reviewer, it's been several times where I read stuff and I'm like, I could tell you're trying to force this. This doesn't even seem natural. This doesn't even seem like something that you do, or the target audience that you're talking about that this specific grant focuses on is not necessarily your target audience, but you're going to use these buzzwords to make it sound like this is what you do. So that's another way, people also just wanted to circle back for that, where people also mess up large and small.
So you do some advising on, I guess my question would be this: one, we don't want to bend the so-called bend the mission to the grant. but also being able as an advisor and what you do, being able to tell them, no, you
Right.
should not apply for this particular grant. You
Yes.
can't fit, you're trying to squeeze,
Yeah.
a round peg into a square hole, right?
I've had several opportunities where folks have sent me something like, hey, can we apply for this or should we apply for this? And you just look at the, and I get it, they're rushing, they look at the tagline or whatever, and they're like, oh, this looks perfect. And you dig into the details. And if you're a smaller organization, maybe it says you need an audit, or you look at something and it says you need to be in a certain location, or you look at something and it's a global grant and, you serve 100 people in Miami-Dade County. I'm not saying that you should not, that you're out of the running, but what I'm saying is that the best use of your resources, or should you be looking for something that's a more viable opportunity? And so I always tell people, after I do the due diligence, I look at what they sent me, the opportunities, and it's been times where I've seen stuff and I just shift through it, and maybe they'll even send it to me later, and I'm like, oh, I already looked at that. That's definitely not a good fit. And so again, you have to say, what is the best use of my resources? I'll have a limited amount of capacity, so what is going to be the best bang for my buck? Not to say you're going to get it, but you have a better chance of getting it.
So that that's something that kind of irks me, that the organization can't make that decision. You have to tell them that that I should know that as the ED or CEO. I should know that already, right? Especially if I'm seasoned. Now, a new organization, I can kind of get why they were okay. I need to reach out to Eboni because I do this line. But there's a whole paragraph of stuff that they have there that they want to see done in the community. But you do maybe 2 or 3 words out of that.
Right.
So, but a seasoned organization would irk me that you can't tell yourself whether you can meet that criteria.
And I'll say just to give some grace there, I think it depends on the relationship with the organization, with their consultant or the development person, because in certain instances, I am like this kind of, they call it fractional CFO, but I'm a fractional, development person for some people. And so, hey, this is what I need you to do because I'm on a retainer. And so can you look at this? Can you look at, and so I'm perfectly fine with doing that. I think to your point, when there are organizations that have a little bit more capacity, or you have a dedicated person, and then they still overlook stuff until the last minute. So one thing I love to do is, before even like really deep diving into something, sometimes you just have to even sign up for the grant portal, because some stuff on the website is not, or in the portal is not on the website. And so you start writing, then you get into the portal and they're like, you need to have an audit. I just did all this work and I can't even apply for it. So it just depends on the relationship with whomever that they're sending the stuff to.
You definitely got to look at what the requirements are and meet the requirements,
100%.
and compare the requirements for what you have, because a lot of it is you can't produce a financial record, or you can't, especially large organizations and larger amounts of money. You must have an audit. You must have a 990 filed.
Yes.
You got to do these things. You have to have your board of directors listed.
Yep.
There's some grants that I apply for. They even want a breakdown of how many women are on your board.
Oh, all day long.
How many African Americans on your board, Hispanics, and so on.
Yes.
They want that broken down, even down to sexual orientation. There's quite a few of them. Now, you could say, not requested,
right.
but they even ask you, what's the sexual orientation of your board?
They surely do.
So there's a lot of questions there, and there's no sense in starting doing all that writing.
Right.
And then read the requirements. You got to read. Read what is it they're looking for, and then the requirements, right?
Exactly. And then sometimes you have to do ROI on what it is that you're applying for, because it may be a good fit grant, but like, say if you're a $10 million organization and it's a $5,000 grant, is that worth their resources, or should you be looking for something else, right? So even if it's a good fit, does that really make the most sense for the time that you can spend? Because those $5,000 applications could be the same amount of time for a $50,000 application, right? In terms of the time that you spend to actually complete it. So I also tell people, like, just kind of think about, does it make sense for you to even go after those funds too?
Yeah. Thank you, Eboni. We'll be right back. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Miss Eboni Moss.